June 19th, 1944, the Philippine Sea. On the flight deck of USS Essex, engines scream against the wind while radar plots begin to fill with the one sight every carrier sailor fears. Incoming Japanese aircraft, not one group, not one squadron, but wave after wave, rising out of the western horizon. The ocean around Task Force 58 looks empty, yet the sky is becoming crowded with death. Men in yellow jerseys wave Hellcats forward. Ordnancemen crouch beside bombs and belts of ammunition. Pilots climb into cockpits, knowing the next few minutes may decide whether the American invasion of Saipan survives or whether Japan's Navy tears open the Central Pacific. Below decks, the great ship trembles with steam, fuel, and steel. Above decks, USS Essex is no longer just an aircraft carrier. She is the visible edge of a new American machine, and the Japanese Navy is about to discover that one ship's name can stand for the system that breaks an empire. By dawn, the Japanese High Command believes it has found the battle it has been waiting for since Midway. 2 years earlier, in June 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy loses 4 fleet carriers in a single catastrophic day: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. That loss does not destroy Japan's navy overnight, but it cuts out its heart. Japan can still build ships, still train pilots, still send fleets across the Pacific. But the balance is changing. The United States can replace what it loses. Japan cannot replace fast enough. By 1943, the difference becomes visible in steel. American shipyards begin launching the Essex-class carriers, large, fast, powerful ships designed not as emergency improvisations, but as repeatable weapons. The first of them is USS Essex, CV-9, laid down at Newport News on April 28, 1941, launched on July 31st, 1942, and commissioned on December 31st, 1942, with Captain Donald B. Duncan in command. When she enters the Pacific in May 1943, she is not arriving alone. She is announcing what is coming behind her. To the Japanese Navy, Essex is a warning disguised as a ship. She carries a heavy air group. She steams at roughly 33 knots. She has armored protection, powerful anti-aircraft batteries, radar-directed fighter control, and the deck space to launch repeated strikes across hundreds of miles of ocean. She is not the fragile carrier force Japan remembers from the early war. She represents a new American logic. If one carrier is damaged, another takes its place. If one air group suffers, another is training behind it. If one operation ends, the next begins before Japan can recover. That is why the title of this story is not about a single magic shot or one heroic captain. It is about the moment Japan realizes that Essex is not merely a hull. Essex is a production line made operational. Essex is industry turned into air power. Essex is the ship that proves the Pacific War will not be decided by one decisive battle, chosen by Japan, but by a rolling American offensive Japan can no longer stop. Her first combat months are a preview of the coming storm. On August 31st, 1943, Essex participates in strikes against Marcus Island. On October 5th and 6th, her aircraft attack Wake Island. On November 11th, she joins carrier operations against Rabaul, one of Japan's key fortress bases in the South Pacific. Later that month, she supports the Gilbert Islands campaign as Marines bleed on Tarawa. On December 4th, she strikes Kwajalein. From January 29th to February 2nd, 1944, she supports the assault on the Marshall Islands. These are not isolated raids. They are steps in a chain. Each island taken becomes an airfield. Each airfield shortens the American reach to the next target. Every strike teaches American carrier crews how to coordinate fighters, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, submarines, logistics ships, and amphibious forces into one enormous moving weapon. Japan watches the map contract, and every mile lost brings the home islands closer. Then comes February 17th, 1944, Operation Hailstone. The target is Truk Lagoon in the Caroline Islands, long treated by Allied planners as Japan's Gibraltar of the Pacific. Truk is supposed to be a shield, a fleet anchorage, a place too dangerous for American carriers to approach casually. But Task Force 58 comes in with fleet carriers, light carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and hundreds of aircraft. Essex is part of this new fast carrier striking force. American planes sweep over the lagoon, attacking airfields, ships, fuel, docks, and anchorages. Bombs fall into blue water that flashes orange and black. Merchant ships burn at their moorings. Aircraft explode on runways before they can rise. Truk does not become an invasion target. It becomes evidence. The Americans can now strike what Japan once considered safe, and Essex is helping push the front line across the ocean without asking Japan's permission. For Admiral Raymond A. Spruance, commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, and Vice Admiral Mark A. Mitcher, commander of Task Force 58, the next great objective is the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. The Marianas matter because they change the war's geography. From those islands, the new B-29 Super Fortress bombers can reach Japan itself. For Admiral Somu Toyoda, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, this is not just another American move. It is a threat to the Empire's inner gate. Toyoda triggers Operation Eigo, a plan built around Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's first mobile fleet. Ozawa intends to exploit Japanese aircraft range, use island airfields in the Marianas, draw the American carriers into battle, and destroy them. On paper, it is the decisive fleet action Japan wants. In reality, it is Japan's last serious chance to restore carrier power before American airfields stand within bombing range of the homeland. The numbers look massive, but they hide the real imbalance. Ozawa has 9 carriers, including the fleet carriers Taiho, Shokaku, and Zuikaku, supported by battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and oilers. He has roughly 450 carrier aircraft, with additional land-based aircraft expected from the Marianas under Vice Admiral Kakuji Kakuta. The United States has Task Force 58, 7 fleet carriers, 8 light carriers, fast battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, and close to 900 carrier aircraft. Essex herself is in Task Group 58.4 under Rear Admiral William K. Harrell, with Captain Ralph A. Ofsty commanding the ship. Her air group includes Hellcat fighters, Helldiver dive bombers, and Avenger torpedo bombers. Around her are carriers like Langley and Cowpens, cruisers such as San Diego, Vincennes, Houston, and Miami, and a screen of destroyers ready to throw up a wall of steel. Japan is coming to fight carriers. America is waiting with a carrier system. On June 12, 1944, Task Force 58 begins striking the Marianas. Saipan, Tinian, and Guam are hit before the invasion beaches see the main landings. On June 15th, American Marines and soldiers land on Saipan. The island becomes a battlefield of caves, ridgelines, sugarcane fields, and artillery, but far offshore, a larger drama begins. The Japanese fleet moves east. Ozawa believes he can attack from beyond the effective reach of American aircraft and use Guam and other fields as shuttle bases. Spruance knows his primary mission is not to chase glory, but to protect the invasion. Mitcher wants to strike west and catch the Japanese at dawn, but Spruance refuses to be lured away from Saipan. That decision frustrates aggressive carrier officers, but it keeps the American shield where it must be. The trap Japan hopes to set is already weakening, because the Americans do not fight the battle Japan wants. At 5:50 in the morning, on June 19th, a Japanese aircraft from Guam spots the American carrier force and sends a report before being shot down. The first movements begin. Japanese planes launch from Guam. American radar sees them. Hellcats rise from flight decks across Task Force 58, including Essex. Fighter direction officers guide pilots toward the incoming raids. This is one of the great invisible revolutions of the Pacific War. In 1942, carrier battles often depend on search luck, pilot instincts, and visual sightings. By 1944, radar, fighter direction, combat air patrols, and coordinated anti-aircraft fire turn American task groups into layered defenses. The Japanese pilots are brave, many are determined, but too many are undertrained replacements flying into a system designed to find them early, intercept them far out, and shred survivors before they can reach the carriers. The first Japanese raid comes in scattered and confused. Hellcats dive out of sunlight. Machine guns flash. Burning aircraft fall through white cloud and blue sky, trailing black smoke into the sea. Some Japanese pilots press on, trying to break through the screen toward the American flat tops. They meet 5-inch guns, 40mm Bofors, 20mm Oerlikons, and the invisible hand of proximity fuses bursting shells near aircraft without needing direct hits. The air becomes a storm of metal. Pilots see wings shear away, engines burst into flame, parachutes open too late, and aircraft cartwheel into the water with white explosions of spray. On Essex, deck crews keep launching and recovering, feeding the combat air patrol, refueling fighters, and pushing damaged aircraft aside so the cycle can continue. The Japanese plan depends on overwhelming the carriers. Instead, each wave is being consumed before it can land a killing blow. Across June 19th, 4 major Japanese air attacks try to pierce Task Force 58. The result becomes known to American aviators as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, a phrase that sounds almost casual until the scale is understood. This is not a fair hunt. It is a technological, training, and industrial imbalance made visible in the sky. Japanese pilots who once dominated the Pacific are now outnumbered, outtrained, and thrown against radar-controlled defenses they cannot solve. Some aircraft get through. USS South Dakota takes a bomb hit. Other ships face near misses and violent anti-aircraft engagements. But the American carrier force remains intact. The flight decks keep working. The combat air patrol keeps forming. The invasion of Saipan remains covered. And with every Japanese aircraft destroyed, Ozawa's carrier force becomes less a weapon and more a shell. While the air battle rages, the submarines strike at the heart of the Japanese fleet. USS Albacore fires torpedoes at Taiho, Ozawa's new flagship, and the most modern carrier in Japan's navy. At first, the damage seems containable. Taiho continues operating, and Japanese officers believe she may survive. But gasoline vapor spreads inside the ship. Ventilation decisions turn damage control into disaster. Hours later, Taiho erupts from within, a huge internal blast tearing through the carrier. On the same day, USS Kavala attacks Shokaku, a veteran of Pearl Harbor and one of the last great survivors of Japan's pre-war carrier force. Torpedoes hit, fires spread, aviation fuel and munitions turn compartments into furnaces. Shokaku sinks. In a single day, before American carrier planes even find Ozawa's main body, 2 Japanese fleet carriers are gone. Japan has come for decisive battle, and the ocean itself is taking pieces from it. On Essex, the men understand only fragments at first. They know the sky is full of contacts. They know aircraft return with bullet holes, blood in cockpits, and pilots speaking too fast after combat. They know planes are missing. They know the deck never stops moving. The carrier is a living factory under attack. Elevators bringing aircraft from hangar to flight deck. Fuel hoses snaking across planking. Bombs lifted and armed. Propellers turning. Radios crackling with vector orders. The smell is hot oil, cordite, sweat, aviation gasoline, and salt. A fighter comes in hard, one wheel low, sparks ripping from metal as it skids across the deck. Men sprint toward it before the propeller stops. Another Hellcat is already being waved forward. Essex does not win because nothing goes wrong. Essex wins because when things go wrong, the ship keeps operating. By the end of June 19th, the Japanese air arm is crippled, but Ozawa is not finished. He still has ships. He still has some aircraft. He still believes land-based planes on Guam and Rota may join the battle. On June 20th, the American carriers spend much of the day searching. The Japanese fleet is far west, nearly beyond reach. Reports come in late and confused. At 3:40 in the afternoon, the distance, course, and speed finally become clear enough. Ozawa's force is about 275 miles away, moving west. Daylight is dying. Fuel margins are narrow. A strike launched now may reach the Japanese near sunset and return in darkness. This is the moment of near failure for the American carrier force. Not because Japan is winning the air battle, but because victory is tempting Micha into a dangerous throw. If he does not strike, Ozawa may escape. If he does strike, American pilots may vanish into night and are empty fuel tanks. Micha chooses the risk. Around 4:20 in the afternoon, Task Force 58 launches a long-range strike of more than 200 aircraft. Hellcats, Avengers, Helldivers, and Dauntlesses lift from the decks and head west toward the fading light. Essex contributes to the weight of the attack, part of the same of carrier mass that has already smashed the Japanese raids. The planes fly over empty water so long that every minute becomes a calculation. Fuel gauges drop. The sun leans toward the horizon. Pilots know they may have enough gasoline to fight or enough to come home, but perhaps not both. When they find the Japanese fleet, they attack through anti-aircraft fire and confusion. Bombs strike. Torpedoes run. The light carrier, Hio, is sunk. Other ships, including carriers and oilers, are damaged. The Japanese fleet absorbs another blow, but now the American aircraft must find their carriers in darkness. The return becomes one of the most haunting scenes in naval aviation. Night covers the Philippine Sea. Exhausted pilots fly east with engines coughing and fuel tanks nearly dry. Some cannot find their groups. Some circle black water, searching for any light, any wake, any signal that means safety. Aircraft begin ditching. Others crash on landing. Flight decks are crowded, dangerous, and lit by urgency. Micha faces a decision no admiral wants. Keep the task force dark and reduce the risk from submarines, or illuminate the fleet and save his pilots. He chooses the pilots. Ships turn on lights. Searchlights stab upward. Destroyers fire starshells. In submarine-infested waters, the American fleet reveals itself like a city at sea. Planes stagger in from the darkness, some landing on the wrong carriers, some slamming down hard, some breaking apart. The cost is high, but the meaning is unmistakable. The carrier force can take risks Japan cannot match because it can recover, rescue, replace, and continue. When the Battle of the Philippine Sea ends, Japan has lost 3 carriers, Taiho, Shokaku, and Hio. It has lost hundreds of aircraft, including carrier planes and land-based aircraft that should have supported the battle. Thousands of Japanese sailors and airmen are dead. The United States loses 123 aircraft and 109 men, a serious cost, but not a strategic wound. The imbalance is devastating. Ozawa still has ships, but the trained carrier air groups that make those ships weapons are gone. A carrier without pilots is a floating target. A flight deck without trained aviators is a promise that cannot be kept. From this point forward, the Imperial Japanese Navy can still sortie, still fight, still die spectacularly, but it can no longer conduct large-scale carrier warfare in the way it once imagined. In that sense, June 19th and 20th are not just a battle, they are a verdict. This is why Essex becomes such a powerful symbol. She is one carrier in a fleet of carriers, but she is also the lead ship of the class that changes the arithmetic of the Pacific. Japan's strategy depends on attrition hurting America, enough to slow the offensive. The Essex-class reverses that hope. Every time Japan loses airmen, fuel, carriers, or bases, those losses deepen. Every time America loses aircraft, it replaces them. Every time a carrier needs repair, another carrier fills the line. Every time one task group returns to Ulithi, another moves forward. The Japanese Navy is not defeated only by courage, nor only by tactics, nor only by better aircraft. It is defeated by the terrible consistency of American production, joined to operational learning. Essex is the name on the bow, but behind the bow stand shipyards, training fields, oil refineries, radar factories, ammunition plants, and thousands of sailors who make the ship fight every day. After the Philippine Sea, Essex does not leave the war. She moves deeper into it. From June 12th to August 10th, 1944, she supports the Marianas campaign. Saipan falls in July, Guam is retaken, Tinian becomes an American base. The strategic consequences are immense. Airfields in the Marianas place Japan within reach of B-29 raids. The inner defense line Japan hopes to preserve begins to collapse. Essex and the fast carriers then turn toward the Palau Islands, Mindanao, and the Philippines. In September 1944, she strikes the Palau Islands and Mindanao. She supports the Peleliu landings. In October, she joins Task Force 38 as the carriers strike Okinawa, Formosa, and Luzon. Japan's empire is no longer protected by distance. The carrier force is moving like a blade around the edges of the inner perimeter, cutting airfields, shipping, and fleet movement before Japan can mass strength. Then comes Leyte. On October 20th, 1944, American forces land in the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur returns, but offshore the Navy must stop Japan's last great surface fleet operation. The Japanese plan for Leyte Gulf is desperate and complex. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita's center force, built around battleships including Yamato and Musashi, drives toward the landing area. Vice Admiral Shoji Nishimura and other southern forces move through Surigao Strait. Ozawa leads the northern force with carriers that carry too few aircraft to function as true carriers. They are bait. Their purpose is to lure Admiral William F. Halsey's Third Fleet north and open a path for Kurita to smash the invasion shipping. It is a plan born of weakness, not strength. The carriers that once symbolized Japanese offensive power are now decoys, and that change says more about Essex's impact than any captured quotation could. On October 24th, 1944, Essex's air group helped strike Japanese forces during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. The sea around the Philippines becomes a maze of fires, wrecks, torpedo wakes, and radio reports. Musashi, one of the largest battleships ever built, is overwhelmed by repeated carrier aircraft attacks in the Sibuyan Sea and sinks. On October 25th, off Cape Engano, Halsey's carrier aircraft, surface ships, and submarines attack Ozawa's northern force. Japanese carriers, including Zuikaku, the last surviving carrier from the Pearl Harbor strike force, are sunk. The image is almost historical poetry, written in violence. The carrier that helps announce the new American age is part of the force that destroys the last symbol of Japan's old carrier age. At Pearl Harbor, Japan uses carrier aviation to shock the world. At Cape Engano, the remaining carriers are hunted by the American carrier machine that Pearl Harbor failed to prevent. Yet, Leyte also reveals how dangerous victory can become. While Halsey chases Ozawa north, Kurita's center force breaks through San Bernardino Strait and falls upon the small escort carriers and destroyers of Taffy, 3 off Samar. For hours, lightly armed American ships fight with astonishing desperation against battleships and cruisers. Destroyers charge ships many times their size. Escort carriers launch aircraft armed with whatever is available. Smoke screens cover frantic maneuvers. The near failure is real. The Japanese surface fleet comes closer than it should to the vulnerable invasion area. But even here, the logic of the American carrier war holds. Aircraft from escort carriers, fleet carriers, and nearby groups attack, harass, confuse, and exhaust Japanese commanders. Kurita turns away. Leyte is saved. Japan has thrown nearly every remaining naval instrument into the battle and still cannot stop the landing. The price for Japan is irreversible. Leyte Gulf costs the Imperial Japanese Navy battleships, carriers, cruisers, destroyers, aircraft, fuel, and confidence. It does not end all Japanese naval fighting, but it ends the Navy as a strategic instrument capable of changing the war's direction. Essex continues forward. In November 1944, she strikes Manila and the northern Philippines. On November 25th, off Luzon, the war comes directly onto her deck. A Japanese kamikaze, flown by Lieutenant Yoshinori Yamaguchi, dives toward the carrier and slams into the port edge of the flight deck among aircraft fueled for takeoff. Fire blooms instantly. Fuel-fed flames race across the deck. Metal tears open. Men are thrown down by blast and heat. Smoke covers the island structure. 15 sailors are killed and 44 are wounded. For the first time in her far-ranging combat operations, Essex is damaged by enemy action. The scene is exactly what Japan's new desperation is meant to produce. The kamikaze is not merely an attack. It is a confession that conventional naval aviation can no longer break the American carrier force. Japan turns pilots into guided weapons because it no longer has enough trained pilots, aircraft, fuel, and time to fight the carrier war on equal terms. On Essex, sailors rush into fire with hoses, foam, tools, and bare urgency. Burning wreckage lies across the deck. Ammunition threatens to cook off. Men drag wounded shipmates away from flames while others clear debris, so the carrier can return to flight operations. The damage is serious, but it does not remove Essex from the war. Unlike some carriers that suffer catastrophic kamikaze damage, Essex requires only limited repairs and returns to action the following month. Japan has struck the ship. It has not stopped the system. That is the deeper reason Japanese naval officers fear Essex. A battleship hit by a torpedo may withdraw for months. A carrier with a shattered deck may become useless. But an Essex-class carrier is designed to absorb damage, be repaired, and return, while the fleet around it keeps fighting. In December 1944, Essex supports operations around Mindoro. She rides through the violence of Typhoon Cobra, a storm that kills more American sailors than many enemy attacks, and sinks destroyers in towering seas. The fast carrier force suffers, searches for survivors, reorganizes, and goes back to war. In January 1945, Essex strikes Formosa, the Sakishima Islands, Okinawa, Luzon, the China coast, Hainan, and Hong Kong as part of the sweeping operations of Task Force 38. The ship is not a lone raider. She is a moving airfield inside a fleet that can appear, strike, vanish, replenish, and strike again. By February 1945, the war has reached the edge of Japan's home defense zone. On February 16th and 17th, Essex operates with Task Force 58 during carrier attacks against the Tokyo area, the first major carrier strikes on the Japanese home islands since the Doolittle raid shocked Japan in April 1942. This time the symbolism is different. In 1942, 16 B-25 bombers launch from USS Hornet in a daring raid that proves Japan can be touched. In 1945, the fast carriers arrive with the weight of an entire offensive behind them. Essex sends aircraft toward airfields, factories, and installations connected to Japan's remaining air power. On February 25th, she helps attack targets meant to neutralize enemy air strength before and during the Iwo Jima campaign and to cripple aircraft production. The Empire's defensive perimeter is no longer a perimeter. It is a shrinking circle under repeated carrier attack. From March 23rd to May 28th, 1945, Essex supports the conquest of Okinawa. Okinawa is not just another island. It is the bloody doorstep of Japan. The battle brings massed kamikaze attacks, radar picket destroyers burning offshore, Marines and soldiers fighting through ridges and caves, and sailors living under the expectation that the next speck in the sky may be a suicide plane. Essex and the carriers launch combat air patrols, strikes against airfields, close support missions, and defensive sweeps. The sea around Okinawa becomes a graveyard of aircraft and ships. Japan is now using men as ammunition because its old naval strategy has failed. Yet even amid kamikaze terror, the fast carrier force remains. It bends, it burns, it buries its dead, it keeps launching aircraft. The Empire is fighting with sacrifice. America is fighting with sacrifice joined to replacement. In July and August 1945, Essex takes part in final carrier raids against the Japanese home islands. The dates stretch from July 10th to August 15th, when Japan's surrender becomes real. The targets include airfields, shipping, naval bases, and industrial centers. By then, the Imperial Japanese Navy is a shadow. Its great battleship Yamato has already been sunk on April 7th during Operation Tengo, a suicide surface sortie toward Okinawa. Its remaining carriers are immobile, camouflaged, fuel-starved, or destroyed. Its trained aircrews are gone in numbers that cannot be repaired. Its island bases are cut off or bombed into impotence. The empire that once plans a defensive ring across the Pacific is now being struck from the sea and burned from the air. Essex is still there, not because she alone ends Japan, but because she embodies the kind of power Japan cannot answer. When the dust settles, Essex earns 13 battle stars for World War II and a Presidential Unit Citation. She is not sunk. No Essex-class carrier is lost to enemy action during the war, despite heavy damage to several. That fact is not luck alone. It reflects design, damage control, screens of destroyers and cruisers, radar warning, fighter direction, anti-aircraft power, and the sheer depth of American naval resources. Japan can still kill sailors, it can still damage ships, it can still terrify men on flight decks and in engine rooms, but it cannot reverse the tide. The war has become a contest between a shrinking empire and an expanding arsenal. Essex is one of the places where that difference becomes visible in steel, aircraft, and fire. The legacy of Essex is larger than her own deck. The class she leads becomes the backbone of American carrier power in the Pacific and remains important long after 1945. Essex-class ships serve through Korea, the Cold War, anti-submarine operations, training, and modernized jet age roles. But their World War II meaning is clearest in the Japanese collapse. Before Essex, Japan can imagine that America's carriers are few enough to be ambushed, attrited, and defeated in a decisive battle. After Essex, that dream dies. The United States does not need one decisive carrier duel. It can create a permanent moving front of carrier air power. It can hit Marcus, Wake, Rabaul, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Truk, Saipan, Guam, Formosa, Luzon, Okinawa, Tokyo, and keep going. That continuity is what breaks Japanese strategy. So when the Japanese Navy is said to call Essex the ship that ended their empire, the statement is best understood as a historical truth in symbolic form. No surviving order needs to phrase it so neatly. The record says it through actions, losses, and desperate adaptations. Japan sends carrier air groups against Task Force 58 and loses them. It uses carriers as decoys at Leyte because they no longer carry enough power to decide the battle. It sends kamikazes against Essex because ordinary carrier aviation can no longer stop her. It watches American aircraft appear over waters once considered protected, then over islands once considered vital, then over the home islands themselves. Essex is not the Empire's only enemy. She is the name painted on one of the machines that reveals the Empire's fatal weakness. Japan starts a war of distance, but America turns distance into runway. The tragedy is that every strategic lesson is written in human lives. Japanese pilots climb into aircraft knowing training is short and odds are cruel. American pilots fly into darkness with fuel gauges falling toward empty. Sailors fight fires on decks slick with aviation gasoline and blood. Shipyard workers who never see combat shape the steel that carries men into it. Admirals make decisions that save invasions and doom pilots, protect beaches and expose ships, chase fleets and risk disaster. War is not won by machines alone, but machines decide what courage can accomplish. The Japanese Navy has courage. It has sacrifice. It has commanders willing to gamble everything. But by 1944 and 1945, it no longer has the industrial depth, trained aircrews, fuel, radar network, or replacement power to turn courage into victory. Essex survives because she is more than brave. She is prepared, she is repaired, she is reinforced by sister ships, oilers, tenders, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, submarines, air groups, shipyards, and factories thousands of miles away. That is the hard truth Japan confronts too late. Empires are not ended only when capitals fall or surrender documents are signed. They begin to end when their enemies can replace losses faster than they can inflict them, when their defensive lines become targets, when their elite forces cannot be rebuilt, and when their most desperate attacks only prove how few options remain. USS Essex does not end Japan's empire with a single bomb, a single battle, or a single day. She helps end it by showing that the United States can carry overwhelming air power across the Pacific, keep it there, and bring it back again after fire, storm, darkness, and death. In the end, the ship that Japan cannot stop is not just USS Essex, but the relentless human system behind her. And that is why empires fall, not only when they lose battles, but when they discover their enemy can survive every price they thought would be unbearable.